just have to believe in what you think, and believe that everything you've thought out and envisaged is good. Just believe in yourself, really. I think that's the key thing. If you start sort of doubting yourself too much, that's when you end up trying to design for committee, or you try and please too many people. That's when things get diluted or just end up being a bit crap.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. I'm Sam Moores, and with me today I have Paul. Hello.
How you doing? You all right?
Good, thanks. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. My name's Paul Howse. I'm a car designer, come artist, come car designer. So it kind of depends on what projects I've got on at any one time. But trained as a car designer up in Newcastle upon Tyne. I graduated 2005, I think, and then went to the Royal College of Art, did vehicle design there. And then I was at McLaren for 11 years, McLaren Automotive, designed a few of their cars there. And and then I left there in 2020, was doing turned to doing watercolor painting. And now I'm sort of doing a bit more design work again. So it's been a bit of a journey, but it's been good.
Bit of a journey, bit of a ride. Right, let's dig back into some of this. Did you always want to design cars, or did that sort of form itself along the way?
I think subliminally, yes. I think like most kids of sort of my generation, drawing cars in your English books and not listening to lessons. And I've kind of always been drawing cars, and I used to just draw cars for, just for fun. I was okay at art. I wouldn't say I was the best, but I was, I enjoyed it. And then my dad is a massive petrol head. He worked so at the time, when I was a kid, he was working on race cars as a sort of technician engineer.
Oh, sweet.
And then, I think as you grow older, as you go through your teens, you then start to look at what's around, what I might do for a living. And I found out there was this job where you designed cars. I didn't really, before I was about 15, you didn't really know what's out there. And so sort of got into that, realised what I needed to do at university. And that was from that point on, from the age of sort of 15, 16, some would say it was foolhardy, but I was, focused on that's what I was going to do. That was the only option, really. Didn't really have a fallback. So that was what I did. Studied at university, and then sort of very lucky to land a job at McLaren. So
that's pretty cool. From speaking to, you'll have to tell me about your experience. A few designers. It sounds like often the courses, like car design, are really small.
Yeah.
Was yours quite a small group of people?
Yeah, it was. So, as I say, I studied at Northumbria University, and we had, I reckon, probably 15 people in our class.
Yeah.
So I studied there 2001 to 2005. Somewhere like Coventry University has probably 100 people on the course. I think with any course, in my experience anyway, and people I've spoken to, you're always going to get like a core group of people who really take it seriously and and really work hard and push each other. Others are there they're enjoying the course or whatever, but they're not really sort of fully focused on it. So there's there was about, from our group of 15, there's about 5 of us that really pushed each other, and pretty much all ended up in the industry. So, but it was quite a sort of small, tight-knit class. Also, there's so few jobs there were and probably still are so few jobs compared to how many people are graduating. There's more people graduating now. The courses come and go. Like my course isn't going anymore, but there are other courses that kind of crop up. There's a lot of people coming out of China and India as well, and Korea, very talented people. So it's very, very competitive. to get a job.
Is there? And then you went, so then you moved on to the Royal College of Art.
Yeah.
Sort of, I guess, refining that.
Yeah.
Is there a way they go about teaching, or can you think of like whether it's how we do stuff in the UK that's a bit different from anything else? Is there anything like sort of unique about those things, or standout things that you're like, I remember having to learn this?
The course leader at Northumbria was a guy called John Sweeney, he was the guy. Him and the city itself were what swung it for me. It was a very small course. It didn't have great links with industry, but his whole thing was about creative thinking, and not necessarily about the technical side of car design. It was about coming up with new ideas, being innovative, and that really kind of chimed with me. And then it was that same sort of theory and foundations at the Royal College of Art as well. It's very kind of free thinking, probably too free thinking for when you get into industry. Like, you haven't been taught anything about how to actually design a car and what the technical side of it. I'm quite lucky, because I say my dad's an engineer, so I've got an understanding. He would probably disagree, but I do have a sort of sensitivity and understanding to engineering. So when you're designing a car in real life, it's got to work.
Yeah.
It's all very well doing a beautiful sketch. Proportions are ridiculous. It's all like slammed, and it's got tiny glass house, massive long wheelbase. But if that doesn't fit onto a package or can fit people in it, like, what's the point? Like, in my view, there's no point. A car can be a piece of sculpture and be functional at the same time, and that's kind of what, through my career, that's what I've learned, is the difficult but rewarding part is kind of capturing what you've done in it. I still do sketches that are pretty exaggerated, asking the modelers I work with, and they're fairly, but they're doable, and I know how to translate a sketch into reality, what I think of it. So that's kind of the key skill that you didn't get taught at university. That's something you kind of learn as you grow through your career and work in studios.
Because that must be, I guess there's different facets of like, when someone's coming up with a concept car, I guess the idea is like, we're creating a new look or a new thing, a new vibe. It doesn't have to necessarily be productionable.
Yeah, and I guess that's got its merits in certain circumstances, but I still think that you've got to be able to translate that to something commercial. Otherwise, let's say there's what's the point? Okay, you get people excited about it. That's great. There's a lot of concept cars that have come out that I love, but they've got to be able to translate from that vision. It's I guess you could see it as a stepping stone. The concept car is a stepping stone from the sketch to reality, but off so many times it doesn't translate. And the production cars look nothing like as cool as the show cars. So
do you think that's sort of lessening as time goes on? We see less crazy concepts.
Yeah, I think it is lessening. Yeah, you look back even 10, 20 years ago, and there were still some pretty bonkers concepts coming when motor shows were a thing, and everyone was putting everything into, go to Frankfurt or Paris, and every autumn, and it was like, what's the cool next concept car going to be? But yeah, I think the last year or so there's been a bit of a renaissance in them, but there was definitely a sort of a lull for a while.
Yeah. The ones at the moment, I can't think of an example off the top of my head.
No, I can't either. I'm useless.
It seems to be
keep up with things.
like pure sort of like marketing idea. Like, I'm going to make it up, but I feel like MG did like some insane kind of fast race car thing. And you're like, you're never making that. Maybe they will, but like.
No, but that I guess that's a good example of I'm contradicting myself here, which is fine. That was creating a buzz around the brand, and that was a super cool concept. Completely bonkers, but really, really yeah, just cool. It was a cool thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was actually a friend of mine that designed it. So I'm not just saying that just to please Gareth, but it was it was pretty bonkers. But it did create a massive amount of hype around MG, didn't it? And they're obviously trying to launch the little roadster as well at the same time. So yeah, it's does have merit, but
that's the two sides of it, isn't it? It's like creating a we're kind of a crazy out there marketing-y type thing, and then I guess they tried to link it to the road cars. And then I think we've all been annoyed when you see something. An example I thought was quite good recently of not would be the Renault R5. The concept looks pretty similar to the final car.
Yeah.
And you're therefore, I think it's that thing of like, you're not annoyed when the production car comes out.
Yeah.
Whereas like, that's not always the case.
No, a bad example of that is the little Honda, I can't remember what it's called now, the little Honda EV city car. Is it called the E?
I think so.
But the show car to that from a few years beforehand, again, can't remember what that was called either. They had a city car and a sports car, and they were so cool. The proportions, that thing, the proportions were amazing. As in the proportions of all the elements, it just looked really cool. That one, yeah. So that was mega. And then the production car comes out, and it's nothing like it. It's got all the tiny little wheels. The lights are in a different place. Everything's proportionally different. It's like it's just been morphed.
Yeah.
Or someone's copied it and done a really bad job. So that's a bad example of taking show car to reality. It's quite a tricky thing to do.
Yeah. And weirdly though, like that one, I look at the final car and I think it's quite cool. It's just nowhere near as cool.
No, if you hadn't seen the show car, maybe it would have been all right. But yeah, a bit.
So you got a job working at McLaren.
Yeah.
And what were you sort of doing? What were you thrown into at the beginning?
So yeah, started in the March 2009. 12C hadn't been launched at that point. There was rumours about it. I think I'd seen the article in Car Magazine. It was on the cover. So I remember seeing that. But first job was to design the key fob for the 12C. So that was my first job there. So I did a load of sketches, took it to a point, and then I was obviously straight out of university, so had zero experience. So the resident designer there at the time, Tony Petman, he sort of took my sketches and ideas and made them a reality. And he was the one who was working on the 12C. He'd been sort of developing the 12C, especially the interior up to that point. So so that was the first job, and then we were kind of, I can't even remember. I think we were doing a few bits and bobs with the facelift to the 12C. So when Frank came in, wanted to just change the front a little bit because it was already been designed before he arrived. So he added the jowl. So I think I was working with him on that, and then we started the P1 in the September. So 6 months in, that was when Project One started, and Rob Melville, who eventually became design director, he started at that point. So he came in and was like straight into the fire. I'd been there 6 months, kind of get my feet under the door. But that's when we started P12, which became P1, which looking back was bonkers. It was a dream scenario. I couldn't believe I got the job to start with, at McLaren. But then to be the first project to be involved in is their new Halo car. Not only to be involved in it, but for my theme to get chosen was just beyond dreams. It was amazing.
So for that process of people coming up with some concepts and whatnot, how many people are sort of submitting? How does it work?
Usually I'd say most, if you're in a relatively small studio, all the designers, most of the designers will submit proposals. So you're coming up with tens of different ideas each, and trying to, you kind of, it's a big, I would say it's like a big funnel. You got loads of scattergun ideas up here, and then it all gradually comes down. And then you'll select maybe five themes, take them into scale models, then it will go down to 2, and then it'll go down to 1. With P1, actually, it was only myself and Rob there at the time, when Frank was the director. So he did a theme. So there's 3 themes that were running. And yeah, it was my theme that got selected. It was quite crude at the time. I guess the theme was there, like the body side and the rear and even the front, the volumes, everything was there in the early theme stage, but the fine tuning and the sort of the finesse of lines, sections, volumes, that all, Rob really sort of held my hand through that. He was doing the interior, but he kind of supported me and mentored me through that project. But essentially, I've still got I shouldn't say this, but I've still got some of the original sketches.
Yeah, nice.
And I look back at them the other day, and they're a bit odd, but the theme was in there,
Yeah.
And just it's like anything, you develop, you're never going to come up with the car straight away. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
There's always an amount of design is a development process. And there might be something in a sketch that you see, that's really cool. How do we develop that? How do we kind of refine it? And then it'll eventually turn into sort of the theme sketch.
Yeah, you come up with this theme, which is like, this is pretty much what we want, the vibe of the car, the general look. But then you're like, someone comes in and as you say, they go, well, you've got hard fixed points there, and we need this bit, that. So you have to start.
So when you're developing those sketches, you would have been given a package or a brief at the start, so you know what you're kind of designing around. The amazing thing with P1 was that there wasn't really a form language or a design heritage to follow. There'd been the F1, in 91 or 92, which was itself was quite conservative when it came out. Beautifully done, beautifully executed. Like it's an incredible piece of design. But it was quite conservative. 12C, that was considered quite conservative when it came out and was sort of lambasted for that. So we had to generate a buzz around McLaren, this brand new company, McLaren Automotive. We had to come up with a form language and a design language that was going to convey the brand values that even then hadn't really. Yeah. Obviously, it was race bred, form with function. We kind of developed that whole form language from nothing really. We had the Formula One cars in the studio. We were looking at the organic shapes that actually aerodynamics does develop. It's you take the stickers off a Formula One car and all the shapes are really, really organic because it's almost evolutionary. It's like sped up evolution. So some of the forms are quite similar to nature, and we noticed that. So we kind of we embraced that and developed this form language that wouldn't sort of ebb and flow with trends. Yeah, it was there for a reason. The forms, therefore, should be beautiful. They can be quite technical, but they should always have a beauty to them. So, it was all about beautiful forms over aerodynamic shapes. Yeah. That was always the mantra. And it's something that I still believe in to this day. It's not, we're not, I say we, I think, myself as a designer, I don't think it should be, hang on, I'm kind of getting tongue-tied here. You always want to innovate. You always want to find something new. That's very difficult to do. But I think as long as there is a function and a truth to what you're doing, it's not just styling, especially with sports cars. Passenger kind of normal production passenger cars are a different thing. You've got a very limited package to work with. It's extremely difficult to come up with new shapes and forms and languages. Can be done very well, but a lot of the time it's just kind of, it can end up in a bit of a mess. But with sports cars, you've got, I truly think they've always got to have a, function with form needs to go hand in hand. So with aerodynamics, that's why you'll see a lot of sort of similarities between, you look at when the Valkyrie came out, we were at McLaren. Well, I was still at McLaren then, and we were like, my God, this is so. And the Ford GT, they're very McLaren thinking. Their form language is slightly different, maybe slightly more angular, but the thinking was so similar to what we were trying to do. So those parallels with function.
Yeah, and when I was just thinking about it now, if you think about like the evolution of those product lines, like 12C, when I look at it now, at the time I was like, that was my initial impressions of 12C. But I look at it now, and it's been in. I've seen it around for however long they've been out. I think they look great. I think they look better in contrast to other cars now.
Yeah, they definitely, and we always said that was going to be the case because it was a very traditionally beautiful, almost supercar by numbers. That's being a bit mean, but it was Ron's brief for the car was to tempt Porsche buyers away from, or tempt them up into supercars. So, his logic was that Ferrari and Lamborghini do their thing very well, but we want to be what a Porsche buyer would aspire to jump up into the supercar league. That was the brief for the 12C. But when it got a lukewarm reception, that was when sort of I think he realised and Anthony Sheriff, who was in charge at the time as well, realised that needed to come up with something new and innovative and really push the boundaries, just like the Formula One cars push the boundaries of performance. The new design language had to push the boundaries of design, and I believe we achieved that as a team. I think you look back, P1's now what? Well, we started it 15 years ago, pretty much, nearly 15 years ago, and it still looks pretty fresh.
Yeah,
there's a few bits that are a bit naive on it. I look back at it and I wish I could have done something a few bits differently, but as a whole, it's pretty special.
Yeah, and then it's like these cars. I guess if I think about like old Formula One, not old, but like older, whatever, 70s, 80s, 90s, it's all like super smooth shapes. And then as you get to now, everything just gets like more aero and all these little appears everywhere. And I guess that seems to be happening in supercars. Like if you look at your Valkyrie, I mean, even just the sculpting shapes on that sort of stuff's like kind of mad. But 750S or whatever,
the Valkyrie's, it's not. When it first came out, I wasn't a fan, to be honest. I thought it was very clever, but the design of it, I wasn't a fan. I think the Spider looks better because it hasn't got the funny hump roof. The sort of the centre line is a bit funny on the coupe, but when you see one up in the flesh, the aerodynamic thinking is incredible. Obviously, there's no compromise from Adrian Newey. So it's an incredible thing to behold when you're in front of one. Not traditionally beautiful, I would say, but very impressive.
It is very like a spaceship.
But there are a lot of there's a lot of stuff out there at the minute there's so many blades and fins and so much aggression and aggression for the sake of it as well. And things that bug me are when nothing lines up. I always think there should be a line from the nose through the tail. Your eye can track from the nose all the way up to the tail. That was I think that's super, super important. And there's so many cars that just don't do that. I won't single out any.
There are a lot of cars
I'm sure
that don't do that.
You can guess there's quite a few that don't.
And I guess definitely with sort of more mainstreamy saloon cars and whatever, that all like, whether it's literally any of the brands, all the bonnets are like raised up a bit. And you get this weird disconnect.
Yeah, there's massive problems with problems. There's the legislation for crash safety and pedestrian safety and occupant safety do determine a lot of these things, and all the sensors now for ADAS systems, so advanced driver systems, LiDAR, and I'm quite glad I'm kind of out of the mainstream design studios right now because what they have to deal with is yeah, it's insane. So
And what was it like working at McLaren during that time?
it's funny. I was talking about this last night, and it was, Ron was such a figurehead, and he did in a way rule by fear. He always worried about if he was round the next corner, is he going to appear? So he struck that kind of element of fear and compliancy into the workforce, but it meant you were focused. You knew his standards were super high, like stratospheric standards. So you had to be on your best game the whole time. And I think he was an incredible guy to work for, as it were. And I think those standards were what created obviously the legacy of McLaren. But it was really exciting. It was a small team of like-minded people. Everyone had a common goal. So, and I think that kind of comes across in some of those early products. And there's an energy around the team as well.
Yeah, all pretty exciting. It's not that often you get to join a new supercar company.
No, exactly. As time went on, obviously the company grew into what it is today, and with that comes extra challenges.
Yeah, and then at some point you made a veer.
So I was I'm going to mix it up. When to drop it in, but basically I'd worked my way up to manager. So I was design manager there on a project that didn't see the light of day, and I was doing less and less designing. I was doing more managing people, time, projects, and I never trained for that. I trained to make beautiful things. And I just wasn't. I guess I wasn't probably cut out for it. I ended up realizing I was a bit of a control freak. I thought I would be able to trust people, but I found it hard to sort of trust people to do the jobs how I wanted it done. So I'd end up I also had a couple of people in my team, or one in particular, that was never did as he was asked.
Nice.
So I'd end up having to redo everything twice. And anyway, it got to a point I was under a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure from the projects as well, being limited time, limited budgets. It was all kind of just compressing, super duper stressful. And I ended up having a breakdown. At work. So I had to leave the studio in floods of tears, and it was pretty horrific. So I was then signed off work for 3 months, just as COVID hit. I think it was in the February of 2020 when I went pop, and then COVID struck. I rang Rob just before my 3 months was up, and I was like, I don't think I'm ready. I couldn't sleep. I was having anxiety attacks in my sleep. It was I couldn't focus on anything. I literally couldn't focus on anything. The smallest thing would tip me over again.
Wow.
And he's like, don't worry. It's we're having to furlough most of the I think it was about 80% of the studio. They kept a skeletal staff just to kind of keep things rolling over. But so that was, in a weird way, I think with a lot of people as well, COVID had a silver lining. It was obviously awful, but it gave me the time to recover. And I started doing painting as a bit of therapy. So I was getting back to, like I was saying earlier, about, as a kid, drawing for fun. And I ended up getting back to that with the watercolor. That's what it gave me. It was almost like a childlike expression, so I was able to get back into that. And then it just snowballed, really. I started an Instagram account, and a few people were asking for commissions, and it kind of started off as just topping up my furlough pay, but it ended up being something that I thought I could probably carry on doing. And then I was let go. So they did a big round of redundancies at the end of COVID. So like 50% of the studio was laid off. I was one of them. And luckily I had the watercolors to fall back on. And that I then built that up as a business. Was doing a little bit of consultancy work here and there. So I worked with Lanzante on the P1 Spider.
Nice.
A couple of years ago. So we did that. And then the painting's been really, really, really good. It's been, it's just a nice bit of therapy. I get to meet all sorts of different people. With the passion for cars runs through everyone from an old Mini, and not a rusty old 1979 Mini, all the way up to 250 GTO. It's the same passion that runs through everyone, and that's what I love about it. And so the variety of cars and customers that I get to work with watercolors is, it's amazing.
I imagine everyone that you interact with, or a huge percentage, they're enthusiastic because they're coming to you to get a painting of their car or another car.
Yeah, and they love their car or their partner's car. So yeah, it's really nice, and seeing the reaction. The best ones, I guess, normally are when it's been a partner who's got their partner a present for Christmas, and they kind of sneaked some secret views of the car, and I've done it, and then the reaction. I had a couple of people they videoed their partner receiving the painting, and that's kind of priceless.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's a really, really nice thing.
And so going from managing people, sort of design projects and stuff in an office, presumably was like in an office, tons of computer time, meetings, blah, 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 like all that sort of stuff, to then sitting down with a bit of paper. Like, what do your days sort of look like now versus then, and how has that sort of
now I'm kind of gone 180 degrees, and I'm sort of back in the I've put myself back in the deep end of a design project. So I'm working on another project with Lanzante, with Dean and Charlotte, to design a new car. So
this is a 3-seater, maybe. Yes. Who knows? Yes,
maybe. Yeah, no, I think
that information's out there.
Yeah, it is. So I'm in the middle of that, but I've rather foolishly, again, I said I was a control freak, and I'm doing the interior and the exterior, which I think I might have taken off a bit more than I can chew, but we'll see. It's going all right at the moment, but it is full on, So it's full on at the moment. It's back to doing it. But what's enabling me to do this is that it's a tiny team. I'm literally reporting to Dean, who runs the show, and then we've got an engineering team. So and I've got two brilliant alias modelers who are some of the best. So that makes it easier. You've not got umpteen meetings that you go into. You've not got like 5 layers of management to get things okayed. You can make decisions really quickly. I like to think I know roughly what I'm doing by now, and so I know what works, what doesn't, and we're just trying to make, again, you just want to make something cool, make something beautiful.
Yeah.
Sounds simple, but that ultimately that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's a cool project.
And so you were involved with the P1 Spider from them. What are the sort of challenges of approaching that problem as they come to you with a P1 and someone goes, I'm happy to spend a decent amount of money to make this a Spider? Go.
Yeah. So obviously the big one with that was the roof and the hinges, the door hinges. It's a twin hinge. So one up on the A-pillar, one down the bottom. Obviously with a Spider, you can't do that. You've got one hinge. So, and on P1, everything was shrunk down to the absolute minimum on the coupe,
right?
Including that area. Just so that one of the real pinch points is where the air's flowing around the A-pillar of a car, and we've got the radiator ducts on the shoulder. So all that air that's spilling around the A-pillar, we want it to go down into the radiator duct. So everything was pushed right down in that area. So the hinge had very little space underneath the surface. But it was okay because it had another one up here. So the load was spread between 2 points. So we're quite far away. So you get quite small hinges. But with the Spider, obviously there's only one hinge, needs to be bigger. It was so that was probably the most difficult bit for Dean's team to reconcile. And I knew that was going to be a problem. So, but they got used a lot more exotic materials. They kind of had an extra bolting face. So it was it was in shear, so it couldn't move. So they did a lot of really clever, good engineering on that hinge, and that worked. But design wise, I know it like the back of my hand. I've been drawing it. Obviously, once you finish a design, sometimes people ask you to draw it. Like, so we used to do design nights when I was at McLaren, and we used to go and talk about the design process. And we'd be drawing all the stuff that we'd already done, the back catalogue, because obviously you can't draw anything that you're in the new projects, so you kind of end up drawing the back catalogue. And so I know that thing like the back of my hand. I know every single crevice. So to come up with a spider version wasn't, it wasn't particularly. I knew roughly what I'd do with it, and it actually came out better than I was expecting. When he first asked me, I was like, "Ooh," I think the guys at McLaren MSO did look at it back in the day, but it was deemed too, just it wasn't deemed possible commercially and legislatively as well. It's because Lanzante is a kind of aftermarket company, as it were. It's not an OEM. There are the loopholes. They're not loopholes. The legislation is less strict.
It's less, yeah.
But that's not to say that due diligence wasn't taken. There was a lot of CAE and stress testing done on the windscreen surround and the rollover. But it was. I think technically it was probably more challenging than design wise. It was, we knew what we wanted to do with it, and it came out nice. So.
Yeah. Do you think there's, moving forward, companies a bit like Lanzante and small manufacturers, but small sort of boutique companies that don't make very many cars, and possibly under slightly, as you say, like less regulations. Do you think we're going to see the cars from those manufacturers just kind of like, we already are, like kind of just go up in the craziness in the technology and sort of leave the mainstream a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can be a lot more agile and a lot more, you can try new technologies. You can obviously small volume as well. You can do low volume tooling, so rapid prototyping. You can do it, or 3D printing, or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot more opportunities for doing crazy stuff when you're doing low volumes, like less than, say, 20, whatever. And I think, again, we've sort of been talking about this, and it's very difficult to be a successful manufacturer in low volume, as in the thousands, compared to I think you either go to be successful. I'm not a businessman at all. This is just sort of almost repeating parrot fashion what we were talking about. But, the low volume, high value is probably, you're more likely to succeed at that than trying to do, say, in the low thousands, or you go to like Porsche and Ferrari. Ferrari production levels are probably, I'd imagine are roughly at the threshold for making money, and Ferrari can make anything they want and people will buy it. So
yes,
they're a law unto themselves. They do some amazing cars, don't get me wrong, but the brand the power that brand has is just, you've seen it with with Lewis arriving at the team. The brand pull that it has is insane.
They are just different to everyone else.
Yeah. I don't know how they do it. And there's a lot of cars, you look at it from trying to be analytical about the design. So many Ferraris out there. There are so many weird things on them.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't conform to any sort of design rules, but they've still got an allure. They still got, they still draw you in and you just want them.
Yeah.
Even though they're a bit quirky and a bit odd. I think it's funny that I think probably the best designed, as in from a traditional point of view, the best executed design I think they've done recently has been the Purosangue. And I hate SUVs. I hate them. But it's a really well resolved piece of design. I think it's really good. Compared to like the Roma can sometimes look a bit snouty, like a little shrew or something at the front. Other ones all the proportions are a bit funny. The haunches are in funny positions, but I think the Purosangue looks great. But it's just a shame it's a bloody SUV.
Yeah, it's a I mean, it is sort of is what it is, and they've sold them or whatever. But it is funny when you look at different brands, and I don't envy anyone trying to make money in that space. Like McLaren, it's tough.
It is tough. Yeah,
it's tough. But anyway, is what it is. So yeah, when you're doing the artworks and not designing cars, how did you settle on watercolors, and sort of how does your process work?
So my grandmother was a very good watercolor sort of hobbyist. So I guess that was always in the back of my mind, maybe. I never tried watercolors at school, but the pens I use, these ones, AD Chart Pack, and they're really, really wet. So when you put them down on the page on the paper, they come out really, really wet. And I always thought, they're kind of like watercolors, and I wonder how, the way they blend.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder if it's similar. And I'd always fancied having a go at it, but never had the time. When you're working professionally, the last thing you want to do when you get home is draw. I have massive respect and admiration for all these people out there who come home from working as a designer, and then they do their own kind of personal work and they put it up on the internet. Yeah. And I'm just like, that's the last thing I want to do when I get home. I just want to chill out with my family or go for a mountain biking or whatever. So as part of my therapy was just picked up the brushes and had a go. And yeah, it just came quite naturally, I guess. I was just sort of transferring those skills from my career as a designer into watercolor, and my style developed over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. Look back at some of the early stuff, and I'm not particularly proud of it, but that's just your progression. That's how you learn.
Part of the process,
and it is a part of the process. So it's been really enjoyable. It's been a nice sort of period of, I guess, a bit of self-reflection and working out that trying new things. It's always good to try new things, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it's an interesting like what do you call yourself now? Car designer, and depends who you're talking to.
If you asked me 6 months ago, I'd have said an artist that used to be a car designer, but now I'm it just depends what I'm working at any one time. So now if somebody asks me, I'll probably say I'm a car designer who does a bit of artwork on the side. So yeah, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's just what you.
Is there something you'd love to design that's not a car?
Ooh.
Or do you have a go at?
I know nothing about boats, but I think boats are quite cool shapes.
Yeah.
Don't know really. Good question. Yeah. There was always a bit of a synergy, I think, between boat design and shoe design as well. There's quite a lot of cross, people quite often hop between the two industries. Yeah. Where was I? Might have been when I was on an internship at Toyota Advanced in Japan. And one of the designers there he trained as a trainer designer. He worked at Puma, and where else? Somewhere up in Oregon. Anyway, his sketching was incredible. I mean, if you look up sort of shoe concept sketches or trainer sneaker concept sketches, you'll see how similar they are to car design sketches. So there's a lot of kind of synergy, which is weird. You would never think that. But there's quite a lot of sort of people hop from one industry to the other.
Yeah. I guess on the basics, you've got some core structures that you're not allowed to mess with, and then you've got to put your design on the top.
Yeah.
And work.
Yeah.
Work all within that. Exactly. What does your sort of day look like now? Have you sort of worked out your structure?
No, I'm useless I'm not very good at sticking to structures, and I need to. I'm very good at procrastinating, which I think most creative people are. But no, I get up, so get the kids ready to go to school, do some breakfast and stuff for them, maybe take the dog out for a little walk, usual kind of stuff. And then, start at sort of between 8 and 9. I sort of come into my studio, try and work out make a bit of a plan of what I've got to do today. But I mean, for the when in the design phase that I'm in now, I've got to be quite structured about, I've got designers, modelers to feed the sketches, and engineering things to work out and solve. So yeah, I've got to be quite structured. But with the artwork, I mean, it's lovely. I almost felt like I was semi-retired because I was my own boss. I had no one to report to, and just had a deadline to meet for all the different paintings. So if I wanted to go out for a bike ride, so I quite enjoy mountain biking. So if I go out on my bike during the day because it's a nice day, I'd do it, and I'd just work in the evening.
Yeah.
But yeah, haven't had as much time for that recently. So it's not as relaxing, but it's just different challenges. So,
and with working with the modelers, so are you drawing sketches and then it goes to them and they build it into like a CAD model that's then going to get used?
Yeah, so they're the clever ones. They're my hands, effectively. So I come up with the ideas, like you say, in sketches, whether it's in a pen sketch or in Photoshop. Obviously, early on, you try and just create big forms to create a theme, and then they'll translate that. You work with them to move lines around, trying to cap what is it in that sketch. I think that's the key thing. Even if the sketch is exaggerated, what is it about that sketch that makes it look cool? Is it where the bumper's sitting in relation to the top of the wheel arch? Is it where a feature line is coming down and tying up with something else? What is it about that sketch? And then it's then your communication skills with the modelers to interpret that, and their massive skills to interpret what you've done. Quite often, as designers, if we're in doubt, we black it out. So there's an area where you don't quite know what's going to go on, and that's they're the real challenging bits.
And so are they building like a full 3D, like a full CAD model? I don't know to what level of I presume what level of detail of the car that you're making? Yeah,
early on, not much detail. It's literally about the volumes and proportions of the thing. So they're putting the big slabs, whether that's in Alias or there's another program, sort of a subversion of Alias called Subdean. It's a polygon model, so you can literally pull points around and kind of get it very quickly into good shape. So you're working with them in a very basic volume model to start with, and then as you get on, once that's settled down, and you're thinking, it's really happy with that. So it's kind of the phase that we're at on the Lanzante project at the moment. We're kind of happy with how the volumes are all sitting, but there's not much detail, things to intersect. And once you're kind of happy with that, that's when you can start to dial in the details, and then you sort of doing, the design sketches become about how components might go together, what the gap condition is going to be, how is a seal going to sit within a surface, and you're kind of going into that level of detail. At the same time, you're with the modelers, you're refining the surfaces. They're putting their skill into creating nice surfaces that will expand, and all the surface tension, all those kind of things. So.
And then does that model just slowly get like more and more and more and more and more detail over time, so you could basically explode it and it's the full car? Or like when you've got, I don't know, how this panel's going to attach to this and stuff like that?
Yeah, so you're obviously feeding in engineering inputs, and that again, that kind of as part of that funnel, that's where you're kind of hoping to get to, and you'll be inputting more and more engineering detail, whether it's tooling angles, or clearances to components. You're trying to work out, okay, how do we maintain what we got as a volume? There might be hard points sticking out of things, but how do we maintain the cool look of that whilst making it feasible? Making it, that's where the skill is, both from a designer and from an Alias designer point of view. That's where you earn your money, really, is trying to capture what was cool about a sketch or a theme model and getting it to reality.
And that project, I'm trying to think what I've read, so I don't have to ask you too many questions. It's based on an existing car underneath.
Yes, it's based on an existing McLaren chassis. Yeah,
messed with and whatever, and etc. etc. So you've got a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, so it's quite good because we've got a lot of hard points that are already there. I know that package like the back of my hand, so I know where we can be really, really tight to things, where we need to respect certain hard points. They are there for a reason. So we got a great package that I know works, and it gives a good proportion. I know where everything is. So it's been a nice starting point, and I think it's good to have some constraints. Things like the cabin are really, really, they can absorb so much time because there's so much. You've got interior and exterior really battling against each other. Interior headroom, but the car wants to look sleek. So things like that can really, you can spend 6 months developing a cabin. So when you've got things like that are fixed from an exterior point of view, it's you can put your energy into other things.
And how long is this sort of project? Is it like a few years? Is it months?
No, so this one is quite short, quite punchy on the timeline. So we're hoping to get the car to a design freeze phase. So we won't be fully productionized at that point, but it should look, for all intents and purposes, as we hope it to look by Goodwood in July. So it's about a 6 month program, which is pretty tight. Normally it's about 18 months. Well, a year to 18 months. You normally get to that point after about a year. But that's developing a whole new car, new everything. So we've got quite a few things that are, like the wheelbase is fixed. The crash cans, they're fixed. Things like that. We don't have to worry about those. So that takes a bit of time. And like I said earlier, the process, just being able to make decisions like that.
Yeah.
I know what I want. Does Dean and Charlotte agree? Yeah, cool. Okay. If they don't, okay, we'll find another solution. Do you like this? Right, go with that. And it's just really quick, which is very refreshing, and not having to go through, I say, it can take months to make decisions in OEMs.
Yeah. And are there some customers involved yet, or?
So there was a preview evening a couple of weeks ago where they saw what we'd done so far.
So it wasn't customer inspired in the first place.
No, not this one. No, this is Dean's vision.
Cool.
So something he's had in his mind for a long time. So it's been really, really cool working with them to sort of throw some fresh ideas in there, but trying to channel his vision as well. It's been great.
Oh, that's pretty cool being involved with that sort of project. It's like right at the right at the sort of top sharp end.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. I mean, it's daunting as well. It's there's a lot to live up to, and a lot of pressure on us to deliver. But like I say, I've got some really good guys working with me, so I think we can pull it off. So
you're just waiting for the unveil, and then
that's the worst.
We've got 10 orders. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, we were saying, talking to Dean last night, and I had exactly the same feeling when I was, when we were doing P1, especially with P1, because I had 720 as well. You believe, obviously you believe in what you do, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
But there's always a massive amount of doubt. Am I the only one thinking this? Or what's everyone else going to think when they see it? And there's a massive amount of doubt, but you just have to believe in what you think, and believe that everything you've thought out and envisaged is good. Believe in yourself, really. I think that's the key thing. If you start sort of doubting yourself too much, that's when you end up trying to design for committee, or you try and please too many people. That's when things get diluted, or just end up being a bit crap. So I've got there's a few things on this car that I've had in my mind for years. I've wanted to do a few features that maybe were not liked or weren't the right direction for when I was at McLaren, but it's still very much my design theory. Like I was saying earlier, but I don't do things to to be fashionable. I do things for a reason, and I believe whatever. If I were to work anywhere, I would carry that mantra through.
Yeah,
and that's just what I believe in. And I'm not going to design things because it's trendy. So in a way, it's been nice to kind of pick the baton back up again and kind of rethink. Okay, I've got that design mantra in my brain. That's what I believe in. But with 4 years of space, when I put the pens down last time, I'm doing things slightly differently. I also think the watercolors have helped me a bit as well, because understanding light and form, painting all these cars and trying to get them to come to life off of the page. The amount of form and section over, especially some of the stuff from the sort of 60s, 50s and 60s. Looking at, it's been that's been quite useful as well, I think.
Yeah. It must be that bit between releasing a car. Like, I remember when P1 came out. I think I was at Geneva when that was released. And that the car at the time, I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is sick. And then I remember 720 coming out, and I remember my initial thoughts, which is like, what is this gulping front end? And I'm sure the media was pretty savage at the time.
I think they were.
And like, how does that play out? Because you're like, I've designed this, I think when all this stuff's like blown out in 5 years' time, I think everyone's going to think this is a good looking car. But when people come back and go, whatever, you're always going to get something straight away.
Well, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And often the best designs are ones that are quite controversial when they first come out, because they're quite visionary. And designers are terrible, right? They're always the worst critics of anyone else's design. If it's not theirs, then it's crap. So I try to be really objective about things, and I try to wait until I've seen something in the flesh. Best example of me not doing this was recently with the Lotus Theory 1 concept car. The press images that came out for it were...
Was that the EV?
White and black one.
Yeah.
The press shots were really bad. It just looked like this big, heavy oath of a car. Chunk. And I was my mate, one of my best mates worked on it, and I was quite harsh about it. But that shot especially, I just think the contrast between the nose, which is way too slim and thin, and the back's really fat and heavy. And I knew I shouldn't have done it. I was so appalled by the pictures. I was like, oh my God, this is awful. Always wait until you see it in the flesh, and that's what people, especially with the 720, that was a good example of why you should wait to see something in the flesh, because then you really understand it. And I had the same thing with the Theory 1. So I went up, I had to eat my words, went up to see it in the flesh in London in the showroom. And it's an amazing looking concept car, with some really cool features. So apologies for my initial reaction to it, but that's why it's so important to really see something in the flesh, so you can really understand the three dimensions. That's why that's the other reason I think clay models are still so important in design, or physical models. You can design something on the screen. You've got, VR technology is amazing these days, but there's nothing beats. Maybe I'm old school, but nothing beats actually seeing something in the flesh and being able to walk around it and feel and touch it. And that was a great example of that. Just the photos just did not do it justice at all. Yeah,
with all those concepts and any sort of new design, there's part of me that's like, come on with your photography, like let's not shoot it super close wide angle, like let's just not do that. But also they're normally, and I totally get it, it's like they just want to see the car in a very clean sort of environment. That's the car. But with like the concepts and stuff, it would be so much better if it was like plonked in a street next to modern traffic, and you'll be like, whoa, this looks so different. And like, say, take like a Valkyrie. Oh, it looked cool anyway, but like put it next to something else.
Yeah, when you see those things on the street, same with like P1s, I don't know, 918s, whatever, any of those like halo cars, they're cool when you see them at a motor show or a car car and coffee thing or whatever, but when you see them actually rolling out on the street amongst normal cars, they just blow your mind.
Yeah.
I remember seeing an SP3. I think it'd just been launched, and I was at Le Mans with my dad, and we were driving to this. We stay sort of about 40 kilometers from the circuit, and we were driving to the circuit, and they were someone was doing a photo shoot. I think it was like Ramp magazine or someone, because they were shooting in the middle of the woods, shooting this red SP3, and I mean, it looks like a spaceship anyway, but
it does.
Seeing it on the road with like Renault Twingos sort of rolling around, and they parked it up a dirt track. It was it's incredible. I think the problem with photo shoots for manufacturers launching new cars, certainly McLaren got tangled up with this as well, was there's so much thought. They get overthought. So there's so many sort of things that they're trying to achieve from these basically 3 photos. You want to achieve so much with all of them, and the photographers are all incredible photographers, incredibly talented. And half the time, I think they should just be left to their own devices to do what they think looks cool. Because most of the time, when the magazines come out, when the embargo's lifted, the magazines come out with their own photo shoots. Even if it's in the same studio, they're better. They're more, I guess, shooting from the hip. They're just got more life and energy to them, and so often the manufacturer's photographs just die. They're just dead. The wrong angles. They're just really overthought. I think that's probably the problem.
It's the same thing as you were saying, like design by committee. It's photography by committee. Yes, someone's taken the photos, but I was chatting to Amy Shaw on the podcast last week, and she was saying she did a shoot for, I can't remember, it was a manufacturer in America, and she turned up and there was like a photo assistant who set up her tripod and put the camera on it, like in the right place. And then there was, various people from the manufacturers that was like, this is the angle we want, this height, like all these sorts of specifications. And she's like, I don't even know why I was there. Like, I get they needed a photographer. They've got to pay someone because they've paid 50 other people to be there. They need someone to press the button. But like, there was nothing for me to do other than just go. And like, that's
not.
There's no creativity in that at all.
Might as well just buy a camera themselves and do it themselves.
I think it's a tricky one. I never see that many good photos. Smaller manufacturers, I think, generally do it better because it's less people. It's less. There's no like concept words assigned to the shoot. Like, this has got to embody blah 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 blah. And you're like, that's not really how it works, is it? It's like, let's go to a cool place, take some cool shots.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But so what are you? What's interesting you in the car world at the moment?
Not a huge amount. I got so fed up with new cars that just I can't. I mean, I'm a big historic car fan, kind of classic car fan, but I just got so fed up with. I don't even know what I used to know every model that came out, but I don't know. It's just there's so much bland meh. Everything's an SUV, and it's just just really boring. And even modern sports cars don't really do it for me that much either. They're so easy to drive. I don't know, just not really into it. But design wise, I think the two ones that stick out for me that I've really impressed with in the last last year or so. Really, I think Renault are onto a good thing. Yeah, I really like a few of the new Scenics around. I think they're a great looking car. Everything's big though, isn't it?
It's big.
Everything's massive because of legislation mainly and space.
Yeah,
and Toyota, I really like what Toyota are doing as well. I think Toyota are doing some really cool. Have been doing some cool stuff in the last few years. New Land Cruiser is pretty horrible, but I think most of their sort of. I really like the little Igo Cross and the kind of Yaris, and there's some cool things. I think Toyota and Renault are probably the ones that I like at the moment. Volvo I've loved for a long time. Forging their own path of really nice design language that started with the XC90, but that needs a bit of, I think, refreshing now. Even though it still looks good. They haven't fallen into the trap of trying to overcomplicate and make things overly aggressive. So again, being
nice.
hypocritical again. Maybe they shouldn't change it. Maybe it should just stay as they are. Maybe it doesn't need refreshing. You look at the formal language of their cars back from the 70s through to the 90s. It didn't change, but you knew what you were getting with the Volvo. The difference is this time they're kind of sexy at the same time. So rather than being a staid old box that stayed the same for 20 years, now they're it's an attractive, cool looking car. So maybe they shouldn't change it.
Yeah, they seem to have like snuck. It's not snuck in because it's been over a period of time, but they're like, I think that, and I don't know whether it's just age. Like as I'm getting older, I'm like, I think Volvos are kind of cool now. Whereas like there was a point in time where you'd be like, absolutely not. But I think they need their interiors. They need a bit of a change for me. They've gone too like one screen.
I think everything's like that.
It's weird.
Does my head in. Bloody screens.
Yeah.
And again, I'm a bit of an old fart when it comes to all this, but I don't need to see all this stuff unless the car's fully autonomous, unless everything is fully autonomous, and then you get all your screens to do all your whatever you're doing, watching movies or doing your work, whatever. So much distraction. The amount you can't drive past cars. Obviously, as a passenger, because if I'm driving, I'm looking ahead. But the screen, the amount of illumination coming off the screens of cars that you're sort of passing on. It's like to be fair, I've not really driven many super modern cars with these big screens, so I should be careful what I say without having tested it myself. But I just don't see why you need all that information.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
And it is a lot of light. What's the trend that we see a lot of at the moment in who does it? VW does it. Is the light bar on the front of the car?
Oh yeah.
Well, horrendous.
Yeah, it was cool. He thought it was cool initially because it's like quite tronny and 80s. But then when everyone does it,
yeah.
I was driving at night the other day, and I think there was a Golf, a Porsche Macan or something, and it might have been a Renault. They all had the same signature light on the back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's I guess the trouble with car design is that you come up with ideas, and if everyone's looking at the same kind of, well, not blogs anymore, shows how old I am, but the same inspiration images.
Yeah.
The trends are gonna come to the surface, and you're gonna come up with similar things. And because the lead time on these things is so long, a lot of these cars are designed 4 or 5 years before they're launched. So if you're all kind of into the same thing at that time, that can happen where you're all coming out, the cars all emerge at the same time. It's like, crap.
Yeah.
We've got the same bloody same lights.
And you're probably like, year one, we've got all these cool ideas for this. Year 5, can we do the next one already?
Yeah, well, as a design team, you are only working on things a lot of manufacturers will have an advanced studio that do the really kind of upfront 10, 15 years, 20 years ahead. And then those kind of themes and for each product line will get passed to the production team, who will then make them work, because often the advanced stuff doesn't necessarily work.
So you're not working on one project for 4 years. You're doing the ones that are not out yet.
Exactly, yeah. So you're working on something for maybe a year, 18 months, probably 6 months in advance. You probably work on a project, and then you sort of jump onto the next thing. And then in production, it's probably a year to 18 months. And then obviously there's like 2 years of prototyping, and getting the car through all the legislation, getting it through all the crash tests, and actually getting it to production. But your work as a designer and the design team finishes like probably halfway through the development cycle, because all the parts have got to be made, they've all got to be tooled, they've got to be tested. Sometimes you'll get bits come back that need to be tweaked, and they need to go back through the studio. But the intense part of the work is generally the first year to 18 months. So it's quite cool because you're working on the sort of the crest of the wave of a car's life. So generally you've moved on to 1 or 2 cars ahead of something. By the time 720 came out, we were well into Artura, probably Probably was quite a way into the Artura project by that point. So that's the sort of the cadence is a bit weird. So when things come out and everyone gets all excited about them, you're kind of like, oh,
yeah, we're so much further ahead now. I guess that is probably a benefit of working for a bigger manufacturer. Is like they're always planning for the future and planning, and you can allocate a certain amount of resources to chewing up that. Whereas on a really small company, yes, I'm sure you're thinking about maybe the team's smaller, I guess. Like those, you may have a bit more time around.
It is more difficult in smaller companies. I think you have to plan. The planning has to be a lot more efficient, I guess, where you put your resources. And whereas, like I say, the big OEMs have got whole entire studios and teams, almost companies within companies doing that planning and at advanced phases, so they can think about it a lot more thoroughly.
Yeah, I was doing a podcast with Christian von Schoening from HWA. Do you know who they are?
No.
Like an engineering firm that have done some quite cool stuff, like SLS, Black Series, the Mercedes AMG race cars. They've like done all that. CLK GTR, they did that. And I was chatting to him and I was like, is there another car? They've just done a BMW old resto mod. No, Mercedes old. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. The cool saloon car from like the 80s, 90s. Anyway,
I know the 190E, the
190E, that one.
Yeah.
They've done
so
cool
resto mod there. Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool.
And I said, it's like, have you got what's coming up? Have you started thinking about the next plan? And he was like, yeah, we've got basically, he was like, we have a company full of engineers. I've got to give them something to do. So obviously the engineering on this car was finished, like whatever it is, a few months ago. So we've got however many people, get cracking. And I'd never thought about it like that at all.
Yeah, no, you have to keep the cadence going. So another example of another bit of work I've done recently since leaving McLaren was for a company called Thornley Kellum, who do resto mods. So we developed, myself and Adam, who's the sort of alias modeler that I work with. We did an XK 120 resto mod, so entirely new body.
I've seen that.
Yeah, that's a cool thing, really cool thing. When you see it in the flesh, it's again kind of the real true test is when you see it in the flesh. But that was a really cool project. But they're obviously always having to think ahead, and they're a tiny company, so that was probably their first. They did the Lancia Aurelia Outlaw, which was based on an old 1950s race car that had been chopped, and then they'd swung the arches and redeveloped all the entire powertrain and mechanics are all completely redeveloped. They do, incredible craftsmanship down there. But the XK was the first sort of truly ground up car that they've done. It's based on the ladder. What's that?
They're doing a set of 3 cars.
Yeah, I was going to say it's they're finding, obviously it's challenging doing one, but they've grown their team massively, and they are developing the 911 is out. The XK is kind of the first. I think the first car's been delivered, and there's 2 or 3 in build. So they're kind of getting through that. They're kind of learning the difficulties of developing cars in sequentially. Although they've got different teams within their company who are working on it, it's still the guy Simon Thornley and Wayne Kellum there having to juggle a lot. They're getting very good at juggling, but they're succeeding. And the cars they produce, like I said, are, if ever you get the chance to see them in the flesh, like go and hunt them out. And the level of detail is insane.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Right, well, I normally wrap this up with 5 questions. Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Ooh, good one. I think probably a lot of the journeys I've done to Le Mans with my dad have been pretty memorable. They're sticking in my memory for a long time. But I'll go with, I was very lucky in my early days at McLaren. The studio manager, a guy called Mark Roberts, was a very charming man, and managed to wangle us a 650S to drive down to Austria.
Nice.
There's a company called Kiska who do a lot of the design work for KTM. So it's a design consultancy based in near Lanzante in the Austrian Alps, and they ran a rally, like a road rally thing, and Mark got invited to it. So me and him went down in the 650S, drove from Woking to, well, it was near Zellamzee. I can't remember the exact name of the town, but and we just had a blast for 2 days driving around the Austrian Alps in this McLaren. And that actually was the first time that I really understood what these cars are about. You can't, in the UK, you just can't use them. You give it a bit of a squirt onto a slip road on the motorway, and that's about it. Unless you go up to North Scotland, which is a long way away from where I live. So getting it down into the Alps, big sweeping sort of Alpine Valley roads, phenomenal. It just completely transformed the car. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I think that's my memorable trip.
Yeah. If you could only drive one sports car for the rest of your life, and if you've got like a cheap few grand something on the side, what would they be?
I'll go with my current car, my little RAV4, a Mark 1 RAV4, because that was 1,500 quid, and it's all the car you ever need. It's brilliant, and it just works, and you can park it anywhere. Don't worry about it. So I'll go with that. Bloody hell, sports car. I mean, you'd want it to be an event, because you've got a normal everyday car. It's got to be really an event. So it's hard not to choose like an early 70s 911, like an ST or something. But yeah, 911 ST.
That'd be pretty good. What is the most undervalued car at the moment? What should be worth more?
Citroen CX, because I've just bought one. And it was, I can't tell you how over the moon I am with it. I mean, it hasn't broken down yet, touch wood, but I paid like 7.5 grand for it. And it is phenomenal. I've always liked them. A friend of mine, very good, one of my best mates, has been into them forever and has been trying to convince me this for forever. But the level, I've kind of wanted one for probably about 10 years.
Yeah.
And the level of engineering and design thinking that went into that thing. So Series 1 CX, that brown one is a good one. But just, the aerodynamics, the level of detail on so many parts of it. The suspension is unreal, literally. Everyone always says, a magic carpet ride, but it's surreal, especially with so many modern cars. That's the other thing that I love about it. All modern cars have to be firm, hard for driving dynamics and handling, and the seats are rock hard, and it doesn't need to be. Sport. If you want that, buy a sports car. And I love driving sports cars and engaging cars, but I don't want my everyday car to be rock hard.
Yeah.
Because you just want to sometimes, especially after a stressful day at work, you want to just be cosseted. And exactly. So I love that, and I think they're very undervalued. So
nice.
Everyone go out and try and buy one, because that'll push the values up.
Okay, final question. 5-car garage, unlimited value.
Oh God. I hate this question.
It's a nightmare.
Okay, easy one. McLaren F1.
Yeah.
Citroen SM.
Mm-hmm.
Alfa Romeo T33.
Ooh.
Probably 32 Model B coupe. So a hot rod 32
okay. Yeah.
Model B. They're all quite impractical, those, aren't they?
Yeah, what's your daily or FDs?
I suppose you'd get a 911, wouldn't you? Just does everything. It's got 4 seats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
911? Which 911? Not I guess a 991. Were they still non-turbo?
Early ones, depending on what you got.
Yeah, 991 like GTS type thing.
Yeah.
I would go GT3, but I need 4 seats because I've got 2 kids. So
yeah. Nice.
There you
That'll
go.
be good.
That'll change. If you ask me again next week, it'd be different. So.
Yeah. It is what it is, isn't it? Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It's been fun.
Sweet.